substantial vote there for the Greens. When we factor in, you always have to wait for the last booth in this electorate. It comes right into the northern parts of Melbourne. There's a 5% swing to the Labor Party. And at this stage, we've got that as a Labor gain, unless there's other information which would change that view.
Probably not, but we'll find out. We've got Lisa Maksimovic, an ABC reporter, standing by in Kinglake in the seat of McEwen. Lisa, what can you tell us?
Well, as you say, it's looking like there's a swing to Labor at the moment, but I'm at the Liberal camp at the Kinglake Football Club, and they're certainly not willing to concede defeat just yet. As you mentioned, McEwen is certainly a seat that is not shy of controversy in the past. It was the most marginal seat in the country in 2007, won by a margin of only 31 votes to Fran Bailey in 2007. So clearly votes are very important coming down to the wire here, and we've heard from Liberal scrutineers that this afternoon at a polling booth in Epping, they actually ran out of voting papers. The AEC then shut the polling booth down for several hours until they could ferry some more papers to the station. They reopened it, and we've been told that at least 100 votes will be deemed invalid because, in fact, the officials there at the electorate forgot to sign them correctly. So at least 100 votes, possibly more, deemed invalid for McEwen.
Lisa, thank you for that. Now, is that going to have any bearing on the outcome?
Not unless it would have changed the result.
Kerry, I've just an update on Aston, which is one of the things we're obviously worried about. It's now got 54.2% counted, and we're on 51.1% two-party preferred. So that seat's looking somewhat more comfortable for us, but it's one we're going to have to watch all night.
I agree with that. Aston's slipping for us.
Can I also add that...
I remember Aston in the by-election. That was a turning point for John Howard that got him back in the game in 2001.
Yeah, and we were sorry to lose Chris Pearce, of course, but if we can hold that without his vote, that's great.
Can I also say that the Greens have slipped into second place in Grayndler, and Anthony Albanese's vote's below 46%. Now, I think he'll get up on those figures, but if the Greens finish second in Grayndler, it's much closer than expected.
What's Albo's primary vote?
45.8, so he'll get up.
He'll win on that.
OK, well, we'll continue the seat run. We're going to look at the seat of Ryan in Brisbane. This was a seat that posed a problem for the Liberal Party not so long ago when the Liberal member, Michael Johnson, was disendorsed.
Well, in the end, it's not been a problem at all for the new LNP. Jane Prentice represents Walter Taylor Ward on Brisbane City Council, and she has done so for the last 10 years. She's pre-selected. Michael Johnson, the sitting member, has finished fourth with just under 9% of the vote. So the preferences in that seat are not going to be a problem. We've got a preference count in a substantial number of booths. There's a 6.3% swing, and the LNP have easily retained Ryan, and Jane Prentice will be the new member for Ryan.
The seat of Hinkler, again in Queensland, based around Bundaberg and Hervey Bay, just north of Brisbane, held by Paul Neville for the National Party since the Liberal National Party now since 1993.
Yeah.
Margin of 1.5%, you've got nearly 60% of the vote counted.
Yeah, it's hard to think of Paul Neville as anything but a National Party MP.
Right.
It's rather hard. We've got to get used to this new beast called the LNP. But Paul Neville's easily retained. He's got over half the vote. The Greens had to change candidate in that seat from member. Yes, they did, and that sort of hurt their vote. A 9.5% swing to the LNP, and no difficulty at all for Paul Neville being re-elected. OK,
now we talked at the start of the night about seats like Solomon, a handful of seats around Australia, Labor seats that could become very critical before the end of the night, and this is the way it's headed. Now, Solomon is held by Labor's Damien Hale since the last election, based all around Darwin and Palmerston, on a very slender margin of 0.2%. We've got 26% of the vote counted, and he might be in trouble.
Yes, he's in a great deal of trouble. It's a smattering of booths from all around Darwin and Palmerston, so there's nothing wrong with these booths. Natasha Griggs, 47.5%. She's the Deputy Mayor of Palmerston, so she's quite well known at that end of the electorate. 12.5% there with the Greens, but Damien Hale's primary vote is low at this stage. When you factor in the preference counts, well, we've only got one preference count from Tiwi, but I'd say on the shift of those primary votes, that swing looks correct. And Damien Hale is in a great deal of trouble. We're not giving it away to the CLP at this stage, but if he loses, that's another loss for the Labor Party.
But the seat of Ford, I think we are giving away. This in the outer southern suburbs of Brisbane, taken by Brett Raguse in 2007 for Labor, part of the Rudd swing. Margin of 3.4%, but with 60% of the vote counted, gone.
Yeah, he's defeated Brett Raguse after his one term in Parliament. He's out. Bert Van Manen will be the new member for Ford, for the Liberal Party. 43.9%. vote there for the Greens and Family First, but we've got preference counts in 2/3 of the booths. That's indicating a swing of 5.8%. And the NLNP win that seat easily with Bert Van Manen, the new member for Ford.
As has happened in Leichhardt in North Queensland, from Cairns to Cape York. This was taken by Jim Turneur in 2007 for Labor from Warren Inch, the Liberal member. But with 48.5% of the vote counted, Warren Inch is back.
An easy victory for... I thought he might have even got 50% of the vote, but he's got 46.3. There's a number of independents contested the seat. At this stage, he's well ahead in that electorate. We've got preference counts in 29 of the 65 booths. That's a swing of 9.5%, and Warren Inch will be easily returned as the member for Leichhardt.
Warren Inch is standing by. Warren Inch, a swing of nearly 10% back to you, some vindication. Warren Inch, can you hear me?
Yes, look, I'm pleased to... Yes, I can, and I say to you, I'm pleased to see that. And as I've been watching the booths going, the results coming in, the ones that give me the greatest amount of satisfaction when I see places like Hopevale, Pomperau, the remote communities, Bamaga, places like that, where I'm suddenly seeing the Aboriginal people, our Indigenous people, suddenly really making a statement, and to me, that is very, very special. I think what has happened in this seat in the last 2.5 years is that our incumbent, and I see it around the country, our incumbent has forgotten that politics is about people. It's not about parties. And I think it's wonderful now. We have a situation here where Far North Queensland has certainly lost its laryngitis, and I can no doubt at all it's found its voice.
The issue of the wild rivers up in your seat, was that pivotal at all?
Look, the dishonest campaign that was run by the Wilderness Society was absolutely appalling. They spent a lot of money doing very, very glitzy DVDs that were only for the city viewing. They run them in Sydney, Melbourne, Canberra, places like that. People had never ever seen it before. They had no idea that there was, the dishonesty that was there within the Wilderness Society. It was all about fundraising for that organisation. They gave no recognition at all. People, 40,000 years they've been looking after that country, and they decided that they had no capacity to do it anymore. The Aboriginal people in Cape York have been for decades trying to recover country, trying to regain some of their own homeland. They've now got that homeland, and the Wilderness Society is saying that they don't have the capacity to look after it, and they're trying to legislate to a point where they lock them up, so that at the end of the day, the only thing that they can do is be naked blackfellas standing on one leg in a lily pond with a spear. Photo fodder for tourists. I've got to tell you that the Aboriginal people in Cape York have got a much greater vision, a much greater dream of what they want to do in the future for themselves and for their children, their grandchildren and great-grandchildren, and they should be given the opportunity of doing it, not locked up by some ideologues from the Wilderness Society are more interested in pushing these agendas to raise money for their own organisation rather than worrying about the welfare of our Indigenous Australians.
And Warren Inch, in 3 years you haven't forgotten how to make a point. Congratulations on winning your seat. Thanks for talking with us.
Thank you very much. It's been, look, I've got to say to you that I haven't won this seat. There are a lot of people out there. There are people that have been affected by a whole range of actions or inactions by the current government. It's those people that have come out and they have now found their voice. And I'm proud to be able to sit here tonight and say, well, rightio, whether you're an Indigenous Australian or whether you're somebody in Cairns, somebody from our Torres Strait communities, my door is always open, and I don't care what your political persuasion is. I mean, I will certainly take up those issues. I will certainly, can't guarantee 100% that I will solve the problems, but I'll give them 100%.
Warren Inch, thanks for talking with us.
We're going to change.
No, he hasn't.
Welcome back, Warren.
All right.
We're going to continue the seat run. We're going to take a look at the seat of Banks. There was a brief moment earlier where this looked a little bit of bother for Daryl Mallam. Held it on a margin of 10.4%. This is in Sydney's southwest suburbs. We've now got 60% of the vote count, and he could relax.
And Ron D'Alessio, the Liberal candidate, is the father of Sophie D'Alessio, who is the young girl who was badly injured in a car accident a number of years ago. Darryl Mellon's well behind, but we do have the Punchbowl and Riverwood booths coming, which are really solid for Labor. And we factored that into our prediction, and it's showing a 6.7% swing, but Darryl Mellon will win the seat. Again, that's one of those seats which was heavily affected by the redistribution, and the early figures may have been from one part of the electorate and showed a larger swing. I'll just toss in as a point here, for the first time tonight, that the national figure has been reached 50-50, rather than Labor behind for the first time tonight. But that's just an indication at this stage.
Which, yes, an indication, but it doesn't necessarily translate to seats.
The voting is only just started being counted in Western Australia, so that would slip back under if Labor does badly in WA.
OK, now the seat of Aston we've talked about. There was a point there where it looked like the Liberal candidate in what has been a Liberal seat might have been in trouble. They're on a margin. Chris Pearce is the retiring MP. Alan Tudge is the Liberal candidate. Margin of 5%. 64.5% of the vote now counted, Anthony.
And apologies to Mr Pearce, his picture was there last time I looked at that graphic, but I mean, it's not a slide on it.
Gone, but possibly not forgotten.
Anyway, but he will be more than happy to see that Alan Tudge is leading there on those votes again from Labor's Rupert Evans. There's only 4 candidates in this contest. This has occurred in a lot of Victorian electorates. And we're seeing quite a vote there for Family First as a result. 3.9% swing to the Labor Party. At this stage, we're saying it's a Liberal retain. So that one slipped back onto the Liberal side of the equation, and that's not marked in as a Labor gain anymore.
OK, now the seat of Melbourne, which is right in the heart of Melbourne, and this has been a Labor stronghold for just about a century. Lindsay Tanner's gone, and Labor, he's retired, but Labor's lost the seat.
Yeah, we don't have exact booth figures in this electorate, which makes us more cautious in giving the way. But the Labor Party, with only 41% of the 41.6, is in deep trouble in Kath Botel. That's the sort of Senate vote Labor used to record when Lindsay Tanner was the sitting member. But that's a swing of 7.9% to the Greens. And our estimate is the Greens are ahead and on track to win. We're not giving it away yet. But it's a battle between 2 left-wing industrial lawyers, and one of them's going to win, and it looks like it'll be from the Greens.
We'll take a brief look at the Prime Minister's seat of Lalor in Melbourne's outer southwest. Julia Gillard has held this since 1998. Safe margin, as you'd expect, of 15.5%. With 40% of the vote counted, she's actually recorded quite a big swing to her.
Oh, a substantial swing. It's a very safe Labor. It includes Melton, Werribee, Hoppers Crossing, those areas those satellite cities to the west of Melbourne. Julia Gillard's on 64.2. Sheridan Ingram's roughly only got a third of that vote. Not much vote for the Greens. There were some other candidates standing on various issues. 73.5%. That's the safest seat we've seen all night because we don't often cover these seats. But that's an 8% swing to Julia Gillard, and I'd take a guess that's probably the biggest swing to Labor in any electorate in Australia at the moment.
OK, now we're going to go to a seat in Sydney called Warringah on Sydney's lower North Shore and extends down to Manly. And this is held by Tony Abbott, and he's also recorded a swing.
Yes, and
not as big as Julia's.
Yes, the 4th candidate there, Alexander Jacob Gutman's also known as the comedian Ostentatious. So he's got 2.7% of the vote there for the Australian Sex Party. But anyway, back to Tony Abbott, 58% of the vote, 22% for Labor, 16% for the Greens. The Greens are doing very well in safe Liberal seats on the North Shore. And when we look at the preferences in that, what we're seeing is a swing of 4.3% to Tony Abbott, and he increases his majority back into double figures. And at the end of the night, Tony Abbott will be declared the member for Warringah.
OK, now the situation continues to unfold, and we'll have some more breaks, I think, to give you a fresh picture very shortly. But we're going to cross for a moment to Tony Jones on the tally room floor with Concetta Fioranti-Wells, a Liberal Senator from New South Wales, and Paul Howes, a trade union leader with the Australian Workers' Union.
Okay, Concetta Fioranti, you've actually had a watching brief on a lot of New South Wales seats. Give us your take on what you're seeing.
Look, I think we're seeing certainly the results in Bennelong are very, very good. Very happy with those. Macquarie, I think that's at the moment looking good. Hughes, I think, is also looking good. Gilmore. Lindsay and Greenway are still too close. Greenway is a very interesting seat, and I think that's been a surprise for the Labor Party. Our candidate, James Diaz, is doing very, very well in that seat. I think it was one of those seats that perhaps the Labor Party may have taken their eye off, but he's certainly doing quite well out there.